The cold came first, not as a whisper, but as teeth sinking into exposed flesh. Solveig stumbled forward through the blizzard, one hand pressed against the massive swell of her belly, the other clutching the threadbare cloak that did nothing against the wind's fury. Snow stung her cheeks like needles of ice, and each breath burned her lungs with crystalline fire. The world had narrowed to a tunnel of white static, erasing landmarks, erasing hope, erasing everything except the primal need to keep moving. Just a little farther, she told herself, the same lie she'd been repeating for the past hour. Just over that ridge, just past those trees. But there were no ridges anymore, no trees. Only endless snow beneath an angry sky painted the color of old blood by the rising moon. Her water broke between one step and the next. The sensation was unmistakable, a sudden warmth cascading down her thighs, immediately freezing in the sub-zero temperature. Solveig's legs buckled. She caught herself against a snow-covered boulder, gasping as the first contraction seized her abdomen like a wolf's jaws clamping around prey. "No," she whispered into the storm. "No, no, no. Not here. Not now." The universe didn't care about her protests. Another contraction followed, stronger than the first, doubling her over. Her knees hit the snow, and she realized with crystalline clarity that she was going to die here. She was going to die, and her daughter, her precious prophesied daughter, would die with her, and everything she'd endured would mean nothing. The Frostfall Pack's banishment, the weeks of hiding in abandoned cabins and caves, the gnawing hunger, the constant fear, all of it would end in this frozen nowhere, witnessed only by uncaring stars and the blood moon that hung fat and malevolent above the storm. Solveig's mind drifted as her body began to shut down, hypothermia and labor warring for which would kill her first. She thought of the old seer's words, spoken 9 months ago when she'd first learned of her pregnancy. "Your child will bridge the divide. Your daughter will unite what has been broken." The prophecy had cost Solveig everything. When Alpha Corvus discovered she carried his dead son's child, he'd demanded she terminate the pregnancy. His son, her mate, her love, had fallen in battle against the Northern Territories, and Corvus wanted no reminder of his heir's weakness, no half-blood Omega spawn to dilute his lineage. Solveig had refused. Some choices were simple, even when they destroyed you. Another contraction tore through her, and she screamed into the wind. The sound was swallowed instantly, as if she'd never made it at all. Her vision tunneled further, darkness creeping in from the edges. This was it then. This was how her story ended. She collapsed fully into the snow, her cheek pressed against ice that felt almost warm now, a bad sign she knew distantly. Her hand remained on her belly, feeling her daughter's movements growing weaker. "I'm sorry," Solveig whispered to the child she would never hold. "I'm so sorry." The darkness rushed in like a tide, but just before it claimed her completely, she saw them, 2 points of light piercing through the blizzard. Eyes, golden and burning with an intensity that cut through the storm like twin suns. Something was coming. Solveig tried to lift her head, tried to move, but her body no longer obeyed. The eyes grew larger, closer, and she realized they belonged to the biggest wolf she'd ever seen. Its fur was black as midnight, and it moved through the snow with predatory grace, utterly unbothered by the storm that was killing her. Northern wolf, her fading mind supplied, one of the enemy. Then even that thought dissolved, and there was only darkness. Noir had been tracking the strange scent for half an hour, driven by an instinct he didn't understand and didn't trust. He'd been returning from the border patrol, running his territory's edge as he did most nights when sleep refused to come. The blood moon made his wolf restless, eager for violence or release or something he couldn't name. Then the wind had shifted, carrying something that stopped him mid-stride. Vanilla and pine, snow and something sweeter, warmer, and underneath it all, the unmistakable copper scent of blood. His wolf had surged forward without his permission, following the trail with single-minded intensity. Noir had stopped questioning his animal instincts years ago. They'd kept him alive when logic would have gotten him killed, but nothing prepared him for what he found. The woman lay crumpled in the snow like a broken doll, her body already dusted with white. She was small, even curled on her side as she was, but her belly was massively swollen with late pregnancy. Her face was pale as death, lips blue with cold. Noir shifted without thinking, his massive wolf form flowing into his human shape. The cold bit at his bare skin, but he ignored it. Werewolves could handle temperature extremes that would kill humans, for a while at least. He knelt beside her, pressing 2 fingers to her throat. Her pulse was there, but faint and irregular. She was dying. "Hey," he said, his voice rough from disuse. "Can you hear me?" No response. He ran his hands quickly over her body, checking for injuries. No blood except between her legs, where her water had broken. Her contractions would start soon if they hadn't already. She needed warmth, shelter, medical care, all things that were at least 10 miles away at his fortress. Noir muttered a curse that would have shocked his beta. 10 miles in this storm, carrying dead weight. It would push even his alpha strength to the limit. But as he scooped the woman into his arms, something happened that made him freeze. The mate bond slammed into him like a physical blow. It crashed through his carefully constructed walls, through the ice he'd packed around his heart after losing his family, through every vow he'd sworn to never let anyone close again. The bond wrapped around his chest and squeezed, forcing him to acknowledge what he'd spent a decade denying. His mate existed, and she was dying in his arms. "Fuck," Noir growled. Then louder. "Fuck!" The woman stirred slightly at the sound, her head lolling against his shoulder. She murmured something he couldn't catch, her hand moving weakly to her belly. "Stay with me," he commanded, adjusting his grip so she was secure against his chest. "I've got you. Just stay with me." He started running. The storm fought him with every step. Wind tried to knock him sideways. Snow blinded him. Ice made the ground treacherous. But Noir had been running these territories since he was old enough to shift. He knew every hill, every valley, every shortcut through the frozen wilderness. He pushed his body past normal limits, drawing on his alpha power to keep moving. His muscles screamed in protest, his lungs burned. But he didn't slow. The woman drifted in and out of consciousness, occasionally making small sounds of pain. Each time, Noir felt the noise like a knife between his ribs. The mate bond amplified everything. Her pain became his pain. Her fear bled into his consciousness like ink in water. He'd been so careful, so fucking careful to avoid this exact situation. After the massacre that killed his parents and siblings, after he'd crawled from the burning ruins of his childhood home covered in their blood, Noir had sworn never to take a mate. Love was weakness. Attachment was vulnerability. He'd built his reputation on being the alpha king who needed nothing and no one. And now the moon goddess had played her cruelest joke, dropping his fated mate literally in his path, pregnant with another man's child and dying from exposure. "You better survive this," he told her, his voice harsh. "You hear me? You don't get to show up just to die." Mile after mile fell behind him. The storm showed no signs of breaking. Noir's feet were numb now, blood from a dozen cuts painting his trail red. He couldn't feel his fingers anymore, locked as they were around the woman's body, but he could feel her heartbeat against his chest, rapid and thready. He could feel the tension in her belly when contractions seized her. He could feel the life inside her struggling. "Not on my watch," he thought savagely. "Neither of you dies. Not tonight." Around the 7th mile, she woke fully for the first time. Her eyes fluttered open, gray as winter ice, and focused on his face with obvious confusion. "Who?" she managed, her voice barely audible over the wind. "Don't talk," Noir said. "Save your strength. My baby. Still alive. But you need a healer." and I need you to stay conscious if you can. Talk to me. What's your name? She studied him for a long moment, and he saw the exact instant she recognized what he was. Terror flickered across her delicate features. Northern Territory, she whispered. You're the Alpha King. Noir's jaw tightened. His reputation preceded him, apparently. Most wolves knew of Noir, the ruthless king who'd unified the fractured northern packs through strength and strategy. The one who showed no mercy to his enemies. The one who'd sworn never to take a mate. Yeah, he said shortly, and you're trespassing, but we can discuss border violations after I keep you from dying. Your name, Solvay. She shivered violently, pressing closer to his warmth despite her obvious fear. Frostfall Pack. Former Frostfall Pack. That explained the scent markers he'd caught earlier. Frostfall territory bordered his to the south. Not quite enemies, but certainly not allies. If she was former Frostfall, that meant exile or banishment. What are you doing out here alone? He demanded. Solveig's eyes were already drifting shut again. No choice, she murmured. Corvus wanted her dead. Couldn't. Her words dissolved into a moan of pain as another contraction hit. Noir felt it echo through the mate bond, and his wolf snarled in response, demanding he protect her, demanding he eliminate whatever threatened his mate, and... He crushed that thought viciously. She wasn't his mate. He didn't want a mate. The bond was a biological accident, nothing more. But his arms tightened around her anyway, and he pushed himself to run faster. By the 9th mile, Noir's vision was starting to blur. Even alpha strength had limits, and he was reaching his. The fortress towers should be visible now, but the storm obscured everything beyond a few feet. Solvay had gone quiet again, her breathing shallow. Her skin was ice cold despite his body heat. If he didn't get her inside soon... There. Through the snow, he spotted the massive gates of his fortress, lit by torches that burned even in the blizzard. Noir put on a final burst of speed, his wolf howling triumph. "Beta Dane!" he roared as he approached. "Get healer Mira to my chambers now! And someone bring furs and hot water!" The gates flew open. Wolves scattered in front of him as he charged through, his naked, bloody form carrying the unconscious woman, causing a ripple of shock through everyone present. Noir didn't care what they thought. He took the steps to his private wing 3 at a time, kicking open the door to his chambers and laying Solvay carefully on his bed. The bed no one else had ever touched. Mira arrived within seconds, her healing supplies already in hand. She took one look at the situation and started barking orders at the servants who'd followed her. "Out!" she told Noir. "No. Alpha, I need room to work. I said no." His voice came out as a growl, his wolf too close to the surface. "I stay." Mira's eyes widened slightly, and understanding flickered across her face. She'd been his healer long enough to recognize the signs. "Very well," she said quietly, "but stay out of my way." Noir retreated to the corner, his fists clenched as Mira and her assistants worked. They stripped away Solvay's frozen clothing, wrapped her in heated furs, and Mira's hands began to glow with the soft green light of her healing magic. Hours passed. The storm raged outside, and Noir stood vigil, watching over the woman he'd carried 10 miles through a blizzard, the woman whose arrival had shattered his carefully ordered life, the woman who, against all his plans and vows, was somehow his mate. When Solveig finally screamed, not in pain, but in the fierce triumph of bringing life into the world, and the infant's first cry pierced the air, Noir felt something crack open in his chest that he'd thought sealed forever. He'd carried her to safety, but as he stared at the tiny squalling baby girl that Mira was wrapping in soft blankets, and at Solveig's exhausted, tear-stained face, Noir realized the truth. He was the one who'd been saved. The first thing Solveig became aware of was warmth. Not the false warmth of hypothermia's final embrace, but genuine heat that seeped into her bones and chased away the death cold that had claimed her in the snow. The second thing was softness beneath her body. Furs, she realized, the kind of quality pelts she hadn't felt since before her exile. The third thing was the sound of her daughter crying. Solvay's eyes flew open, and she tried to sit up. Pain lanced through her abdomen, and strong hands immediately pressed her shoulders back down. Easy, Healer Mira said, her voice firm but kind. You tore during delivery. The stitches will hold, but not if you thrash around like a caught rabbit. My baby is perfect. Mira smiled and gestured to a cradle beside the massive bed. A healthy girl. 7 pounds, strong lungs, all her fingers and toes. She's been fed and changed. You can hold her, but let me check you first. Solveig submitted to the examination with barely contained impatience, her eyes locked on the cradle where tiny fists waved above the edge. When Mira finally nodded approval, Solveig reached out with trembling hands. The baby was warm and solid and real, alive. They were both alive, against all odds. Hello, little one, Solveig whispered, tears streaming down her face. I'm your mama. I'm so sorry it took me so long to hold you. The infant's eyes, still that unfocused newborn blue, blinked up at her. Solveig traced one finger down the impossibly soft cheek, marveling at the dark wisps of hair, the perfect bow of her lips, the tiny nose that wrinkled when she yawned. What will you name her? Mira asked softly. Luna. The name came without thought, feeling inevitable as sunrise. Her name is Luna. Moonchild, born under the blood moon. Mira nodded. It's fitting. Only then did Solveig look around properly. The room was enormous, easily 3 times the size of the small cabin she'd shared with her mate before his death. Dark wooden beams crossed the high ceiling. Furs covered the stone walls, providing insulation and luxury in equal measure. A fire crackled in a hearth large enough to roast a whole elk. This wasn't a guest chamber. The scent that permeated everything, pine and snow and something wild and masculine, told her exactly whose room this was. Why am I in the Alpha King's quarters? Solveig asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Mira's expression became carefully neutral. He insisted. You were dying when he brought you in. Hypothermia, shock, hemorrhaging. I needed the best conditions to save you both, and these rooms are the warmest in the fortress. The Alpha gave up his bed without hesitation. That didn't answer the real question, but before Solveig could press, the door opened. Noir filled the doorway like a storm about to break. He'd clothed himself since carrying her through the blizzard, black wool and leather that somehow made him look even more dangerous than when he'd been naked and covered in blood. His golden eyes swept the room, landing first on Luna, then on Solveig. Something flickered in his gaze, gone too quickly to name. You're awake. His voice was flat, almost cold. Good. Mira, your assessment? Both will recover fully, the healer said. Solveig needs rest and proper nutrition. The baby is thriving. I'll prepare. See to it. The dismissal was absolute. Mira left without argument, though she squeezed Solveig's shoulder in passing, a gesture of support that Solveig found oddly comforting. Then she was alone with the Alpha King and her newborn daughter. The silence stretched between them like fresh ice on a lake, fragile and treacherous. Noir remained by the door, his posture rigid. He looked at Luna with an intensity that made Solveig's arms tighten protectively around her child. Thank you, Solveig said finally. Mira told me what you did, carrying me through the storm. You saved our lives. You were trespassing in my territory. The words were harsh, but something in his tone didn't match. I couldn't let you die and risk the political complications. It was a lie. Solveig knew it with the same certainty she'd known Luna's name. She'd felt something during that desperate journey, a connection, a pull, a thread of gold that tied her to this dangerous man in ways she couldn't explain. But she also saw the walls in his eyes, the deliberate distance he maintained. Whatever he'd felt carrying her through the blizzard, he clearly wanted no part of it now. Of course, she said quietly. I understand. As soon as I'm strong enough, Luna and I will leave. We won't impose on your hospitality any longer than you'll stay until Mira clears you to travel. The command cracked like a whip. Winter storms are worsening. You'd both die within a day. Is that what you want? No, but I don't want to be a burden either. Then don't argue with me. Noir's jaw tightened, a muscle jumping in his cheek. His eyes remained fixed on Luna. The child needs warmth and safety. You'll have both here. Before Solveig could respond, he turned and left, closing the door with careful precision, as if he didn't trust himself not to slam it. Solveig stared at the wood, confusion and something else warring in her chest. Luna made a small sound, drawing her attention back to what mattered. Just you and me, little moon, she whispered. We'll figure this out together. But even as she said it, she couldn't stop thinking about golden eyes and the feeling of strong arms holding her like she was something precious. The following days established a pattern that left Solveig more confused than ever. Noir never visited during daylight hours. Servants brought meals, far richer than anything Solveig had eaten in months, and Mira checked on her regularly. Other pack members occasionally stopped by with supplies or well-wishes, their curiosity about the mysterious woman in the Alpha King's chambers barely concealed. Through them, Solveig learned more about Noir's reputation. He ruled the Northern Territory with absolute authority, having united 3 fractured packs through strategic brilliance and sheer force of will. He was fair, but merciless to those who betrayed him. He demanded loyalty and gave protection in return, and he was utterly, completely alone. Never taken a mate, one servant told her while changing Luna's wrappings. There was talk years ago about an arrangement with the Western Pack's daughter, but the Alpha refused. Said he had no need for such weakness. Weakness, as if love and connection were flaws rather than strengths. Solveig understood that philosophy. After all, love had destroyed her too. Her mate's death had shattered her world, and the child born from that love had cost her everything else. But when she looked at Luna, when she felt that overwhelming surge of fierce devotion, she couldn't regret it. Not even exile and near death could make her wish she'd never loved. The nights were different. Solveig slept lightly, a survival instinct from months on the run. So she always woke when the door opened in the deepest hours, when the fortress had gone quiet and the fire burned low. Noir thought she was asleep. He moved silently across the room, his footsteps barely audible despite his size, and stood beside Luna's cradle. The first time it happened, Solveig had nearly spoken. But something stopped her, some instinct that he needed this privacy, this unguarded moment. She watched through barely open eyes as the terrifying Alpha King bent over the cradle and gently, so gently, touched Luna's tiny hand. The baby's fingers curled reflexively around his much larger one, and Solveig saw Noir's shoulders tense. He stayed like that for long minutes, frozen as if afraid to breathe. When Luna made a small sound in her sleep, Noir's other hand reached out to hover over her head, not quite touching, just offering silent protection. "You're safe here," he whispered, his voice so low Solveig almost missed it. "Both of you. I swear it." Then he was gone, disappearing like a shadow, and Solveig was left staring at the closed door with her heart racing. It happened every night. Always the same careful approach, the same gentle touch, the same whispered promises. And each night, Solveig felt something shift in her chest, a thawing she hadn't expected and didn't know if she wanted. On the 5th night, when Noir's hand lingered on Luna's cradle and his head bowed as if in prayer, Solveig couldn't keep silent anymore. "She likes you," she said softly. Noir jerked back like he'd been burned. His eyes snapped to her, blazing gold in the firelight, and for a moment she saw raw emotion there, longing and fear, and something desperate. Then the walls slammed down, and his expression went cold. You should be asleep. You need rest to recover. I've been resting for days. Solveig pushed herself up carefully, mindful of her healing body. The movement made the furs slip down, revealing the thin nightgown Mira had provided. Noir's gaze tracked the motion before he deliberately looked away. You don't have to leave. She's your guest as much as I am. She's a baby. She doesn't have guests. You know what I mean. Solveig studied him, this powerful man who ruled with an iron fist, but touched her daughter like she was made of glass. Why do you come here every night? I'm checking on my territory's occupants. It's my responsibility. Another lie. They both knew it. Alpha Noir. Don't. The word was sharp. Don't try to make this into something it's not. You're here because I won't let wolves die in my territory. When you're strong enough, you'll leave. That's the arrangement. And if I want to thank the man who saved my life, who gave up his own bed for a stranger, then don't. Noir moved toward the door, his movements tight with controlled tension. I don't need your gratitude, Omega. I need you to recover so you're no longer my concern. The Omega designation stung, a reminder of her low status. In most packs, Omegas were bottom-tier wolves, weak, submissive, often overlooked or abused. Solveig had lived with that label her entire life. But there was something in how Noir said it, not with contempt, but with distance, as if he was trying to remind himself why he should stay away. I'm not asking to be your concern, Solveig said quietly, but I'm also not asking you to pretend I don't exist. You can visit Luna during the day. You don't have to sneak around in the middle of the night like you're doing something wrong. This conversation is over. Noir pulled the door open, then paused without looking back. Mira says you're healing well. You should be able to travel within a week, weather permitting. 1 week. Then she and Luna would be cast back into the cold, back to running and hiding and waiting for death to find them. The thought should have terrified her. Instead, what frightened Solveig more was the surge of disappointment that flooded through her chest. She didn't want to leave, and judging by the rigid set of Noir's shoulders, by the way his hand gripped the doorframe hard enough to make the wood creak, he didn't want her to go either. But want and reality were different things. Solveig had learned that lesson too well. Good night, Alpha Noir, she said. He left without responding, and Solveig lay back down, pulling Luna's cradle closer. They had 1 week. 7 days until she had to face the world again. 7 days to forget about golden eyes and gentle touches and the dangerous feeling growing in her heart. The messenger arrived on a morning that dawned crystal clear and bitterly cold. Solveig was in the private garden attached to Noir's quarters, a sheltered space where Mira had insisted she take fresh air as part of her recovery. Luna was bundled against her chest in a sling, sleeping peacefully, while Solveig walked careful circles through the snow-dusted paths. She heard the commotion from the main courtyard, raised voices, running footsteps, and then a howl that made her blood run cold. That howl carried the signature of Frostfall Pack. Solveig's first instinct was to run back inside, to hide, to protect Luna from whatever this meant. But before she could move, Beta Dane appeared in the garden entrance. The Alpha wants you in the throne room, he said, his expression grim. Now. What's happened? You'll see soon enough. Come. The throne room was massive and severe, all dark stone and iron fixtures designed to intimidate. Noir sat on a throne carved from black wood, his posture radiating controlled fury. His golden eyes tracked Solveig as she entered, Luna still pressed against her chest. On his knees before the throne was a wolf Solveig recognized. Garrett, one of Corvus's favored warriors. He wore Frostfall colors and bore the mark of a messenger, a white band around his upper arm that guaranteed safe passage even in enemy territory. Ah, Garrett said when he saw Solveig, his lips curling into a sneer. The runaway whore herself. Saves me from having to describe you. Watch your tongue, Noir said quietly, or I'll remove it. Garrett was smart enough to look nervous, but he pressed on. Alpha Corvus sends his regards to the Northern King and a demand. Return the Omega Solveig and her bastard child to Frostfall territory immediately. They are pack property, stolen goods that must be property. Noir's voice could have frozen fire. You just called a mother and infant property in my throne room. Alpha Corvus's words, not mine, your majesty. But the law is clear. Solveig was born Frostfall, mated to Frostfall, and bore a child of Frostfall blood. Her exile was temporary, meant to teach humility and obedience. She has no right to shelter in foreign territory without permission. Alpha Corvus demands her return. Solveig felt the blood drain from her face. Luna stirred against her chest, sensing her mother's distress, and began to whimper. The exile was temporary? Noir asked softly, his gaze never leaving Garrett. That's interesting. Tell me, messenger, what exactly were the terms of this temporary exile? Garrett shifted uncomfortably. That's internal pack business. It became my business when Solveig nearly died in my territory. Noir stood, and even from across the room his presence was overwhelming. I'll ask once more. What were the terms? She was told to leave and not return until she'd proven her loyalty to Alpha Corvus. And how was she meant to prove this loyalty? Silence. Let me guess, Noir continued, his voice dropping to a deadly purr. She was meant to terminate her pregnancy, to destroy the child her mate, Corvus's son, left behind when he fell in battle. Am I close? Garrett's expression was answer enough. Rage filled Solveig's chest, burning away fear. She'd suspected, of course, but having it confirmed, knowing that her exile had been designed to kill her and Luna both, that Corvus had expected cold and hunger to do what she'd refused. You bastard, she breathed. He sent me out to die. He wanted us both dead. And when we survived, he waited. He knew where I was this whole time, didn't he? He let me run, let me suffer. And now that I've found shelter, now he wants to drag me back to finish what he started. Garrett had the grace to look away. Noir descended from his throne with predatory grace, stopping directly in front of the messenger. Here is my response to Alpha Corvus. No, Solveig and her daughter are under my protection. They stay in the Northern Territory as long as they wish. If Corvus has a problem with that, he's welcome to discuss it with me personally. I promise it will be a very short conversation. You're risking war over an Omega and a bastard? Garrett's voice rose in disbelief. I'm risking nothing. Corvus is the one who will pay if he pushes this. Noir's smile was all teeth, nothing human in it. Tell your Alpha that I've claimed them. They're mine now. And I protect what's mine. The words sent a shiver down Solveig's spine, not of fear, but something far more dangerous. Alpha Corvus won't accept, then he can die refusing. I don't particularly care either way. Noir gestured to Beta Dane. Give him provisions for the return journey and send him on his way. Make sure he understands that the next Frostfall wolf who crosses my border without permission won't be given messenger courtesy. Garrett was hauled to his feet and dragged from the room, still sputtering protests. When the doors closed behind him, Noir's shoulders sagged slightly, the only sign of the strain he was under. Solveig clutched Luna tighter, her mind reeling. You just declared me yours, claimed me in front of a witness. Do you understand what that means? Corvus will see it as a challenge. He'll have to respond or look weak. I know exactly what it means. Noir turned to face her, and the intensity in his eyes stole her breath. And I meant every word. You're not going back there. Neither of you. But war won't happen. Corvus is a coward and a bully. He preys on those weaker than himself, but he won't face me directly. He'll posture and threaten, but ultimately he'll back down. Noir moved closer, close enough that Solveig had to tilt her head back to maintain eye contact. Even if I'm wrong, even if he does attack, the outcome will be the same. You stay here. You're safe. Why? The question burst out of her. Why would you risk your pack, your territory, everything you've built for an Omega you found dying in the snow? It makes no sense. For a long moment, Noir said nothing. His jaw worked as if he was fighting some internal battle. Then, so quietly she almost missed it. Because I carried you 10 miles through a blizzard, and I'll be damned if I let anyone take you from the safety I bled to give you. The confession hung between them, raw and honest and terrifying. Luna chose that moment to let out a full cry, hungry and indignant. The sound broke the tension, and Solveig automatically began the swaying, shushing motion all new mothers learned. I should feed her, she said, her voice unsteady. Go, rest. I'll post extra guards on your chamber. Noir stepped back, distance returning to his expression. And Solveig? Start thinking about whether you want to stay permanently, because that offer stands, regardless of what Corvus does. He left before she could respond, his footsteps echoing in the vast throne room. Solveig stood alone with her daughter, her heart pounding and her mind spinning with impossible possibilities. Stay. Permanently. In the Northern Territory, under the protection of the Alpha King, who touched her baby like she was precious and looked at Solveig like he was drowning and she was air. It was madness. It was also the only thing she wanted. The storm hit 3 days later with a fury that rivaled the blizzard that had nearly killed Solveig. She stood at the window of Noir's chambers, still her temporary home, though he never complained about sleeping elsewhere, watching snow and wind lash against the fortress walls. Luna slept in her cradle, unbothered by the howling outside. A knock at the door startled her. Come in, she called, expecting Mira or perhaps a servant. Instead, Noir entered, carrying a tray of food and a bottle of wine. The kitchens are closed until the storm passes, he said gruffly. I thought you might be hungry. Solveig stared at the Alpha King of the Northern Territories, arguably the most powerful wolf in the region, delivering her dinner personally. You didn't have to. I know. He set the tray on the small table near the fire. But I was coming to check on you anyway, and the staff shouldn't be navigating halls in this wind. 2 birds, 1 stone. It was the longest conversation they'd had since the confrontation in the throne room. Noir had been conspicuously absent, though Solveig still woke each night to find him standing beside Luna's cradle. Will you stay? The invitation left her lips before she could think better of it. The food is too much for just me, and I could use the company, if you don't mind. Noir hesitated, and she saw the war in his expression, the desire to stay battling against his iron control. Desire won. For a while, he said, settling into the chair opposite hers. They ate in comfortable silence at first, the storm providing backdrop noise. But eventually, as the wine warmed her blood and Luna continued to sleep peacefully, Solveig found courage she didn't know she possessed. Tell me about the massacre, she said quietly. The one that killed your family. Everyone whispers about it, but no one seems to know the full story. Noir's hand tightened on his cup. That's not dinner conversation. Neither is impending war with my former pack, but that's the reality we're living. Solveig met his eyes steadily. You know everything about me, my exile, my dead mate, why I was alone in that blizzard. But I know almost nothing about you. That doesn't seem fair. Life isn't fair. No, she agreed. But trust should be mutual. You're asking me to build a life here, to believe you can keep me safe. Let me know who you really are, Noir. Not the Alpha King, just you. The use of his name without title made something flicker in his expression. He drank deeply from his cup, staring into the fire. I was 17, he said finally. Still training to take over from my father someday. We weren't the Northern Territory then, just one pack among many, all constantly fighting for resources and territory. My father wanted peace, tried to negotiate treaties. He thought cooperation was the path forward. Solveig waited, sensing this was difficult for him. The Southern Pack pretended to agree, invited us to their territory for a summit. My father, mother, older brother, younger sister, they all went. I stayed behind because I was recovering from a training injury. Noir's voice went flat and motionless. It was a trap. They slaughtered everyone, locked the doors and set fire to the building. When I got word and rushed there with our warriors, all I found was ash and bones. Noir. I went insane, he continued as if she hadn't spoken. The grief broke something in me. I rallied every wolf loyal to my family, and we went to war. No mercy, no prisoners. Within a year, I destroyed the southern pack completely. The survivors either pledged to me or fled. Then I turned to the eastern and western packs, offering them a choice: unite under my rule or be conquered. They chose unity, Solveig said softly. They chose survival. I gave them fair terms. Keep your autonomy, your traditions, your territory, but acknowledge me as Alpha King and contribute to mutual defense. It worked. We've had relative peace for a decade. He finally looked at her, and the pain in his eyes was devastating. But I never forgot the lesson. Love makes you vulnerable, family makes you weak. So I decided I would be neither. No mate, no children, no attachments that could be used against me. That's not living, Solveig whispered. That's just existing. It's surviving. There's a difference, is there? She leaned forward, drawn by an impulse she didn't fully understand. Because from where I'm sitting, you look just as broken as I am. We've both been destroyed by grief, both built walls to protect ourselves from more pain. But Noir, those walls, they also keep out everything good. There's nothing good. Luna is good. Solveig gestured to the sleeping baby. You watch her every night like she's a miracle. Don't deny it, I'm always awake. You touch her hand and make promises to keep her safe. That's not nothing. That's not just existing. Noir's jaw clenched. She's an innocent. Innocents deserve protection. And what about her mother? The question was barely audible. What do I deserve? The air between them went electric. Noir stood abruptly, moving to the window as if he needed distance. But Solveig rose too, following on instinct, until she stood close enough to feel his heat. You deserve better than me, he said roughly. You deserve a good man who can give you a normal life, not a broken king who doesn't know how to be gentle. You were gentle with Luna. You were gentle with me when you carried me through that storm. Solveig reached out slowly, giving him time to pull away, and touched his arm. Maybe you're not as broken as you think. Solveig. I felt something. During the journey, when I was drifting in and out of consciousness, a connection, a pull. She took a shaky breath. Tell me you didn't feel it too. Tell me I imagined it, and I'll never mention it again. Noir turned to face her, and the raw hunger in his expression made her knees weak. You didn't imagine it. Then what was it? You know what it was. His hand came up to cup her face, thumb stroking her cheekbone with devastating tenderness. The mate bond. You're my fated mate, Solveig. The one person in all the world meant for me. And I tried. I tried so fucking hard to ignore it, to pretend it didn't exist, because everything about this is wrong. You just lost your mate. You're vulnerable, recovering, caring for a newborn. Taking advantage of that would make me a monster. You're not taking advantage. Solveig turned her face into his palm, feeling tears prick her eyes. I lost my mate a year ago, and I mourned him. I'll always love him. He gave me Luna, and that's a gift I treasure. But he's gone, and I'm here, and Noir. I've been alone for so long. Let me have this. Let me have you. You don't know what you're asking. Then show me. She rose on her toes, bringing their faces closer. Please. I'm so tired of being afraid and alone. You make me feel safe. Let me make you feel something other than grief. The last thread of Noir's control snapped. He kissed her like a drowning man finding air, fierce and desperate, and achingly tender all at once. His hands tangled in her hair, angling her head for better access, and Solveig gasped at the intensity of sensation. The mate bond roared to life between them, golden light that filled her chest and chased away the last shadows of cold. This was what she'd been missing. This connection, this completion, this sense of finally being home. When they broke apart, both breathing hard, Noir rested his forehead against hers. "I can't do this halfway," he warned, his voice rough. "If we start this, if we acknowledge the bond, I won't be able to let you go. You'll be mine, completely. Is that what you want?" Solveig thought of the long months of exile, of nearly dying in the snow, of being told she and her daughter were worthless property to be disposed of at convenience. Then she thought of strong arms carrying her to safety, of gentle hands touching her daughter, of golden eyes that looked at her like she was precious. "Yes," she breathed, "that's exactly what I want." Noir kissed her again, softer this time, sealing the promise between them. When Luna began to fuss from her cradle, they broke apart with matching smiles. Tentative, but real. "I should feed her," Solveig said. "I'll stay." Noir settled back into his chair. "If that's all right. More than all right." As Solveig nursed her daughter, with the Alpha King watching over them both, and the storm raging harmlessly outside, she felt something unfamiliar bloom in her chest. Hope. The attack came in the darkest hour before dawn, when even the guards were fighting exhaustion. Solveig woke to Luna's screaming and the sound of clashing steel echoing through the fortress. She grabbed her daughter and pressed back against the headboard, her heart hammering as smoke began to seep under the door. The fortress was under attack. The door burst open, and for a moment relief flooded through her, until she saw it wasn't Noir or Beta Dane. Marcus, one of the Northern Pack warriors she'd seen around the fortress, stood in the doorway. His sword was drawn and dripping blood. "Sorry about this," he said, not sounding sorry at all. "But Corvus pays better than Noir, and I've got expensive tastes." "Traitor!" The word blazed through Solveig's mind as Marcus lunged forward. She tried to run, but there was nowhere to go. His hand closed around her arm in a bruising grip, and Luna's screams intensified. "Let me go!" Solveig fought with desperate strength, but she was still recovering, still weak. "My daughter." "The brat stays. Corvus only wants you." "No!" Solveig clawed at his face, drawing blood. "I won't leave her." Marcus backhanded her hard enough to snap her head sideways. Stars exploded across her vision. Luna tumbled from her arms. Healer Mira appeared from nowhere, catching the baby before she hit the floor. The older woman's eyes were wide with terror, but she clutched Luna protectively. "Run!" Solveig managed to say, as Marcus dragged her toward the door. "Hide her! Keep her safe! Tell Noir!" Marcus's fist caught her in the temple, and darkness swallowed the world. Solveig woke to pain and cold. She was on horseback, slumped against someone's chest, her hands bound behind her back. Every jolt of the horse's gait sent agony through her healing body. Blood trickled down her face from the blow to her head. They were riding hard through snow and darkness. She caught glimpses of other riders, Frostfall wolves judging by their colors. "She's awake," someone called. The group slowed, and rough hands pulled Solveig down from the horse. Her legs wouldn't hold her. She collapsed into the snow, gasping. Alpha Corvus stood over her, his expression a mask of contempt. He looked exactly as she remembered. Gray-streaked hair, cruel eyes, a mouth that never smiled without malice behind it. Her mate's father, though she'd never seen any resemblance between the kind man she'd loved and this monster. "Hello, Solveig," Corvus said pleasantly. "Did you enjoy your little vacation in Northern Territory? I hope so. It'll be your last comfort before you face justice." "Justice?" Solveig spat blood into the snow. "You tried to kill me. You wanted my daughter dead. I wanted my bloodline purified." Corvus crouched down, grabbing her chin in a painful grip. "My son was weak, tainted by his mother's common blood. When he died, I saw an opportunity. Let the Omega and her bastard whelp disappear into the wilderness. Problem solved. But you survived. You ran to my enemy and made me look foolish. So you paid someone to betray their Alpha King. You attacked the northern fortress. I exploited a convenient opportunity. Marcus was easy to turn, ambitious men always are, and the fortress assault was just a distraction. I only needed you, and here you are. Corvus released her chin and stood. At the new moon, you'll be executed for abandoning your pack and whoring yourself to northern territory. Your daughter will be found and disposed of properly. This ends with me, as it should. Horror chilled Solveig to her bones. You won't touch Luna. Noir will come for me. Noir is dealing with fires and casualties. By the time he realizes you're gone and tracks us here, you'll already be dead. Corvus smiled, cold and certain. The Alpha King isn't your savior, Omega. No one is. Solveig was dragged to her feet and thrown into a wagon. As they resumed their journey south, back toward Frostfall territory and certain death, she thought of golden eyes and gentle hands. She thought of Luna's tiny fingers curling around Noir's hand. She thought of a kiss by firelight that had tasted like hope. I'm sorry, she thought, sending the words out into the darkness like a prayer. I'm so sorry, Noir. Keep her safe. Love her enough for both of us. The wagon rolled on through the night, carrying Solveig toward her execution and away from everything that had finally made her want to live. The smell of smoke and blood hit Noir before he even saw the fortress. He'd been at the western border, mediating a territorial dispute between two of his vassal packs, tedious but necessary work that kept the Northern Territory stable. The meeting had run long, delayed by posturing alphas who needed to be reminded exactly who held ultimate authority. By the time Noir started the journey home, dawn was breaking cold and pale across the snow. He should have been there. The thought carved through him like a blade as he crested the final hill and saw the damage. Scorch marks blackened the walls. Bodies lay scattered in the courtyard, his wolves, fallen defending their home. The main gate hung broken on its hinges. Noir's wolf surged forward, demanding release, demanding blood. He held it back through sheer force of will as he shifted mid-stride from wolf to human, hitting the ground running. "Report!" he roared, as Beta Dane emerged from the chaos, blood-streaked and grim-faced. Coordinated attack, 3 hours before dawn. Fire arrows to create confusion, then breach teams hit the east wall. They knew exactly where our patrols would be. Dane's voice was tight with fury. "We have a traitor, Alpha. Someone gave them our defensive positions." Noir's hands clenched into fists. Casualties? 12 dead, 20 wounded. Could have been worse, but they weren't trying to hold territory. This was a raid. Dane's expression darkened further. They took her. Solveig. Marcus led a team straight to your quarters while we were dealing with the fires. The world tilted. Noir heard Dane still talking, something about Marcus disappearing, about finding evidence of gold in his quarters, payment for betrayal. But the words faded into static. The mate bond, that golden thread he'd finally acknowledged, suddenly felt wrong, stretched, distant. She was gone. The baby? His voice came out strangled, safe. Healer Mira hid Luna in the healing wing. The child wasn't harmed. Small mercy. Noir's chest loosened fractionally before rage filled the space where relief had briefly lived. They'd taken Solveig, ripped her from safety, from the home he'd promised to protect her in, while he was miles away playing diplomat. It was Corvus, not a question. Noir knew with absolute certainty. He paid Marcus to betray us, used the attack as cover to take what he thought was his. That's our assessment. Dane hesitated. Alpha, the council is gathering. They want to discuss our response, weigh the political ramifications of no. The single word cracked like thunder. Noir strode past his beta, through the damaged fortress, warriors scrambling out of his path. He took the stairs to his chambers 3 at a time, slamming through the door. His scent still lingered, pine and snow and wild things. Solveig's scent twined through it, vanilla and warmth. The cradle stood empty. Blood spattered the floor, and Noir's vision went red. They'd hurt her. They'd put their hands on his mate, struck her, dragged her away while she fought. The evidence was written in overturned furniture and claw marks in the wood where she'd tried to resist. Healer Mira appeared in the doorway, Luna bundled in her arms. The baby was crying, little fists waving in distress. She kept fighting, Mira said quietly. Even after Marcus hit her, she was trying to protect Luna, screaming for me to hide her. She made me promise to tell you. The healer's voice broke. She said to keep Luna safe, to love her enough for both of them. Noir crossed the room and took Luna gently, cradling the infant against his chest. The baby quieted immediately, as if recognizing safety. Her tiny hand curled around his finger, and something cracked open in Noir's chest. This child, this perfect, innocent life that Solveig had nearly died protecting. Luna wasn't his blood, but she was his to guard, his to raise, his daughter in every way that mattered. And her mother, his mate, was in the hands of enemies who wanted her dead. "Gather the warriors," Noir said, his voice utterly calm now. The rage had crystallized into something colder, more dangerous. "Every elite fighter we have, leave a skeleton crew to defend the fortress. We march on Frostfall territory within the hour." Mira's eyes widened. That could mean war. It already is war. Corvus made it so when he attacked my home and took my mate. Noir handed Luna back carefully. "Keep her safe. When I return, I'm bringing Solveig with me, and anyone who stands in my way will burn." The war room filled quickly. Pack warriors, some still bandaged from the attack, stood at attention. Beta Dane had maps spread across the table, marking Frostfall territory. Noir addressed them without preamble. "Corvus took something that belongs to me. We're going to get her back. This isn't a negotiation or a political maneuver. This is a rescue, and anyone who interferes dies." Questions? "The terrain favors defense," one captain said, pointing at the map. "Frostfall's main compound is built into a valley. They'll see us coming miles away." "Good. I want them to see us coming. I want Corvus to watch his death approach and know he brought it on himself." Noir's smile was all wolf. "Send a messenger ahead. Tell Corvus he has until nightfall to return Solveig unharmed. If she's hurt, I kill half his pack. If she's dead, I kill them all." Silence fell across the room, heavy with the weight of that promise. "Alpha," Dane said carefully, "that's a declaration of total war. The other territories will have to respond. Our alliances will hold or break based on strength, same as always." Noir met each warrior's eyes in turn. "I didn't build the Northern Territory by being soft. Every pack that swore to me did so because they knew I was stronger, fiercer, more willing to do what was necessary. That hasn't changed. If anything, they need the reminder." He straightened, feeling his wolf press against his skin, eager for release. "Solveig is my fated mate. The mate bond is sacred. Every wolf here knows that. Corvus violated the oldest law when he took her. This isn't about politics or territory. This is about honor, about protecting what's ours. So I ask again, questions?" The warriors shook their heads, resolve hardening in their expressions. They might not fully understand the mate bond's pull. Most hadn't experienced it themselves. But they understood loyalty. They understood justice. They understood their Alpha King was going to war, and they would follow. Within the hour, they were ready. 50 of the Northern Territory's finest warriors, armed and armored, formed ranks in the courtyard. The fortress's remaining defenders lined the walls, weapons ready in case this was a larger scheme. Noir stood before his force, already feeling his wolf rising. The transformation was usually controlled, deliberate. Not this time. This time he let the rage and fear and desperate love fuel the change. His body exploded outward, bones cracking and reforming, muscle and sinew reshaping into his wolf form. But this wasn't a normal shift. Fed by the mate bond's anguish and an alpha's protective fury, Noir's wolf grew massive, easily twice the size of a normal werewolf, black fur rippling with barely contained power. His eyes blazed gold like captured suns. Several warriors stepped back involuntarily. Even Dane, who'd served Noir for years, looked shaken. Good. If his own pack feared him, Corvus would learn terror. Noir threw back his head and howled, a sound that shook snow from the fortress walls and echoed across the mountains. It was a declaration and a promise. I'm coming. Through the mate bond, stretched thin but still present, he felt something, a flutter of response. Solveig was alive, conscious, and somewhere in that distant awareness, he felt her fear transform into something else. Hope. Hold on, he sent down the bond, praying she could feel it. I'm coming for you, just hold on. Then he was running, his pack streaming behind him, a tide of fangs and fury sweeping south toward Frostfall territory, toward his mate, toward anyone foolish enough to stand between them. The Alpha King had gone to war, and the world would shake. The dungeon cell was exactly what Solveig had expected. Stone walls weeping with moisture, a floor covered in filthy straw, iron bars that hummed with silver to prevent wolf transformations. She sat with her back against the wall, hugging her knees, trying not to think about Luna crying for her, trying not to think about never holding her daughter again. 3 days in the cell. 3 days of guards bringing minimal food and water, of Corvus visiting to describe exactly how her execution would proceed, of silence and cold and crushing despair. 3 days of feeling the mate bond stretch thinner, like a rope fraying strand by strand. But it hadn't broken. That was the strange thing. Despite the distance, despite everything, Solveig could still feel Noir somewhere in her chest. A warmth, a presence, a golden anchor that kept her from drowning completely in fear. She wondered if he'd found her note, if Mira had told him her last message. She wondered if Luna was safe, if the baby cried for her missing mother, if... Pain lanced through the mate bond, sharp and sudden. Solveig gasped, pressing a hand to her chest. Not physical pain, emotional. Noir's rage and grief bleeding through their connection. He knows, she realized. He found out I'm gone. The bond pulsed, and suddenly she felt something else. Determination. A promise wrapped in fury. The sensation was so strong it brought tears to her eyes. He was coming for her. Solveig stood on shaking legs, moving to the bars. She could hear sounds from above, guards calling to each other, unusual activity. Something was happening. Then she heard it. Distant, but unmistakable. A howl that made every wolf in Frostfall territory freeze. The Alpha King had declared war. Guards rushed past her cell, and Solveig caught fragments of panicked conversation. Massive force. The Northern King himself. Alpha Corvus says hold position. Hope blazed in Solveig's chest, fierce and bright. Noir was coming. He'd gathered his warriors and marched on Frostfall territory for her. The ruthless Alpha King who'd sworn never to take a mate was coming to save her. But Hope warred with terror. How many would die in this rescue? How much blood would be spilled because she'd been too weak to fight off her captors? No, Solveig thought suddenly, fiercely. No more weakness. She'd spent her whole life as an Omega, the lowest rank, the weakest designation. She'd accepted it because everyone told her that's what she was. Even her transformation had never come, proof of her inferior status. But she'd also survived exile, given birth in a blizzard, fought to protect her daughter against a trained warrior. Maybe she was stronger than anyone realized. Maybe it was time to prove it. Solveig closed her eyes and reached for the mate bond. Noir's presence blazed there, golden and fierce. She grabbed hold of it like a lifeline and pulled, drawing strength from their connection. Then she heard it. Faint but unmistakable, echoing down through the mate bond itself. Luna crying. Her daughter. Her baby. Calling for her across the miles. Maternal instinct roared to life, primal and unstoppable. Solveig's eyes snapped open, blazing not with her usual gray, but with silver light. Her body convulsed, and for the first time in her life, she felt the transformation begin. Pain ripped through her. but not the agonizing pain of forcing a shift. This felt like breaking free, like shedding a skin that had never fit properly. Her bones reshaped with liquid ease. Silver fur erupted across her skin, shimmering like moonlight on snow. When the transformation completed, Solveig stood on 4 legs, staring at her reflection in a puddle on the cell floor. She wasn't small or weak. Her wolf form was larger than any Omega had a right to be, compact but powerful, built for endurance and protection. And her fur, silver, pure silver, the color of the full moon. Understanding crashed through her like a wave. The prophecy. Your daughter will unite what has been broken. Everyone had assumed it meant Luna. But Luna was too young. The prophecy was about Solveig herself. She was a Luna wolf, born once in a generation, marked by silver fur and an ability to channel the moon's power. They were legend, stories told to pups. Most wolves lived their entire lives without seeing one. And Solveig had been one all along, her power suppressed by years of being told she was worthless, years of believing she was weak. Not anymore. Solveig gathered her newfound strength and slammed into the cell door. The silver-reinforced bars, designed to hold any normal wolf, shrieked in protest. She hit them again and again, pouring all her rage and determination into each impact. The bars bent, cracked, finally shattered in an explosion of silver light. Guards came running, weapons drawn. They saw the silver wolf standing in the ruins of the cell and froze, superstitious terror written across their faces. "Luna Wolf," one whispered. Solveig didn't give them time to overcome their shock. She burst forward, moving with a speed and grace she'd never possessed before. One guard went down with a slash of her claws. Another stumbled back, and she was past him, racing up the dungeon stairs. More guards tried to stop her. She fought with instinct she hadn't known she possessed, her power radiating outward in waves that made even trained warriors hesitate. She exploded into the courtyard just as Alpha Corvus emerged from the main hall, flanked by his elite guard. He saw her, silver fur gleaming in the moonlight, eyes blazing with power, and actually took a step back. "Impossible," Corvus breathed. "Omegas can't. You're not—" Solveig shifted to human form in a fluid motion she'd never managed before, standing naked and unashamed in the snow. Power still crackled around her, visible as silver sparks in the air. "I am Solveig," she said, her voice carrying across the courtyard. "Luna Wolf, mate to the Alpha King, mother to the prophesied child. And you, Corvus, made a terrible mistake." Before Corvus could respond, a howl split the night. Closer now, just beyond Frostfall's borders. Noir was here. The Frostfall warriors assembled on their territory's edge, saw death approaching and knew it. The Northern King ran at the head of his force, a massive black wolf that dwarfed even the largest among them. His pack followed in perfect formation, disciplined and deadly. They didn't charge blindly. They advanced with the terrible certainty of an avalanche. Beta Dane, running beside his alpha, had never seen Noir like this. The rage rolled off him in waves, and the mate bond, visible now as a golden thread stretching south, pulsed with desperate determination. They crested the final rise, and Frostfall's main compound came into view below. That's when the silver light exploded across the valley. Every wolf, Northern and Frostfall alike, stopped in their tracks, staring. Power radiated from the compound's center, ancient and primal. The full moon seemed to shine brighter, as if responding to that silver glow. Noir shifted to human form instantly, his eyes locked on the light source. Through the mate bond, he felt Solveig, not weak or injured or dying, but blazing with power he'd never sensed before. "What is that?" someone asked. "Luna Wolf," Dane breathed, his voice filled with awe. "It has to be. Nothing else shines silver like that." Noir's heart stuttered. Luna wolves were legend, rare beyond measure. The idea that his mate, his supposedly weak Omega mate, was one it changed nothing. He was still getting her back. But now he didn't just need to rescue her. He needed to fight beside her. Forward, Noir commanded, shifting back to his massive wolf form. Now. The northern force poured down the hillside like a breaking storm. Frostfall warriors scrambled to form defensive lines, but their formation was already disrupted, half of them staring at the silver light in their own courtyard, unsure whether to fight the external threat or deal with the power awakening in their midst. Noir crashed into the defensive line with the force of a battering ram. Warriors scattered. Those brave or foolish enough to stand their ground learned quickly why he was called the Alpha King. His jaws closed around throats, his claws rent armor. His sheer size and strength overwhelmed everything in his path. But he wasn't trying to kill everyone. He was trying to reach her. The mate bond pulled him forward through the chaos, past burning buildings and fleeing wolves, until he burst into the main courtyard. And there she was. Solveig stood in human form, silver light still crackling around her like lightning. She faced Alpha Corvus and a dozen of his elite guard, her stance defiant despite her nakedness and the odds against her. But she wasn't alone anymore. The moment Noir entered the courtyard, the mate bond flared brilliant gold. It connected them across the space, visible to every witness, a thread of pure light that pulsed with their combined power. Silver and gold, moon and sun, Luna Wolf and Alpha King. Solveig's head whipped around, and their eyes met across the battlefield. Relief and joy and fierce love blazed in her expression. Noir felt the same emotions echo through the bond, amplified by their connection. Together, the bond seemed to whisper. Finally, together. Noir shifted to human form and crossed the courtyard in ground-eating strides. Corvus shouted orders to his guards, but they hesitated, caught between the Alpha King's fury and the Luna Wolf's power. Noir reached Solveig and pulled her against him, one arm wrapping around her waist while his other hand cupped her face. "You're safe," he growled. "You're safe now. I knew you'd come." Her hands gripped his shoulders. "I knew. Later." Noir kissed her fiercely, claiming and promising in equal measure. When they broke apart, he positioned himself so they stood side by side, facing Corvus together. "Right now, we end this." Corvus had regained some of his composure, though his eyes kept darting to the silver light that still surrounded Solveig. "You're outnumbered, Noir. My entire pack. Your pack is terrified." Noir's voice carried across the courtyard. "Half of them won't fight because they recognize a Luna Wolf when they see one. The other half are trying to decide if you're worth dying for. How many do you think will actually stand with you, Corvus? How many when they realize you brought the Alpha King's wrath down on them by kidnapping his fated mate?" Murmurs rippled through the Frostfall warriors. Several were already backing away, lowering their weapons. "She was mine first," Corvus spat. "Frostfall blood. She was never yours." Solveig's voice rang clear and strong. "I was born into your pack, but you cast me out. You wanted my daughter dead. You sent me to die in the wilderness. You have no claim to me, not anymore." "The mate bond supersedes pack loyalty," Dane added, stepping forward with the northern forces behind him. "Every wolf knows that. Corvus violated sacred law when he took her. This isn't conquest, it's justice." Corvus looked around wildly, seeing his support crumbling. In desperation, he shifted to his wolf form and lunged, not at Noir, but at Solveig. A mistake. Noir moved with supernatural speed, intercepting Corvus mid-leap. The two massive wolves collided with a sound like thunder, tumbling across the courtyard in a snarling tangle. But Corvus was old, and he'd grown soft ruling through fear rather than strength. Noir was in his prime, fed by mate bond fury and righteous rage. The fight was brutal, but brief. Noir's jaws closed around Corvus's throat. One squeeze, and it would be over. "Stop." Solveig's voice cut through the bloodlust. "Let him live." Noir's wolf snarled in protest, but he didn't crush Corvus's windpipe. He shifted back to human form, one hand still locked around the fallen alpha's throat, pinning him to the ground. Why? The question came out harsh. Solveig knelt beside them, her silver light dimming to a soft glow. Because we're better than him. Because Luna doesn't need to grow up knowing her grandfather died violently. Because mercy is stronger than revenge. She looked at Corvus, her expression hard but not cruel. You wanted to erase your son's bloodline. Instead, you've ensured it will be honored. Luna will grow up in the Northern Territory, raised by the Alpha King himself. She'll be strong and loved, and everything you tried to prevent. That's your punishment, knowing you failed completely. Noir studied his mate for a long moment, then nodded. He released Corvus and stood, pulling Solveig up with him. You're banished, Noir told the broken Alpha. Take whatever wolves are still loyal and leave. This territory is forfeit. Any of Frostfall Pack who wish to stay will be absorbed into the Northern Territory under my protection. Anyone who follows you becomes an enemy. Corvus crawled to his feet, blood dripping from his throat. He looked at his pack. Most wouldn't meet his eyes. The few who still showed loyalty were his most vicious enforcers, wolves as cruel as himself. This isn't over, Corvus rasped. Yes, Solveig said softly. It is. Corvus and his handful of supporters slunk away into the darkness, exiled and broken. The remaining Frostfall wolves, more than 3/4 of the pack, dropped to their knees in submission. Beta Dane stepped forward, addressing them. Any who kneel now will be welcomed into the Northern Territory. You'll be protected, fed, and treated fairly. All the Alpha King asks is loyalty and honest work. Who accepts these terms? Every kneeling wolf bowed their heads in acceptance. As Dane began organizing the integration, Noir finally allowed himself to fully focus on Solveig. His hands ran over her body, checking for injuries, needing to confirm she was truly whole. I'm okay, she assured him. They didn't. Corvus wanted me alive for the execution. They didn't hurt me beyond the initial capture. Marcus is dead. Noir's voice was flat. I'll hunt him down personally. Later. Right now, I just want to go home. I want to hold Luna and know we're all safe. Solveig's eyes filled with tears. You came for me. You brought your entire force and risked war. Of course I did. You're my mate. My fated mate. Noir pulled her close, burying his face in her hair. I would have burned the world to get you back. I still will, if anyone ever threatens you again. Through the mate bond, Solveig felt the absolute truth of those words. The love and devotion and fierce protectiveness that Noir had spent years suppressing, now unleashed and focused entirely on her. I'm a Luna wolf, she whispered. I didn't know. All these years I thought I was weak. You were never weak. You survived what would have killed others. You protected Luna against impossible odds. You broke free from a silver-barred cell through sheer will. Noir pulled back to look at her, his eyes blazing. You're the strongest person I know, Solveig. Whether you're a Luna wolf or not doesn't change that. The silver light pulsed one more time, then faded completely. Solveig sagged against Noir, exhaustion finally catching up to her. He caught her easily, lifting her into his arms, just as he'd carried her through the blizzard, but this time she was awake to feel the safety of his embrace. Take me home, she said. Always, Noir promised. As they left Frostfall territory behind, the northern pack falling into formation around their Alpha King and his mate, the full moon shone down like a blessing. The prophecy had been fulfilled, not through conquest or destruction, but through the joining of two broken souls who'd found completion in each other. The Luna Wolf and the Alpha King. Together, they would reshape the territories into something better than what had come before. Together, they were unstoppable.